Maya stood on the crowded street corner, her worn boots barely making an impression on the cracked pavement. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow across the city's towering buildings. In the distance, the sound of traffic echoed, a constant reminder of the life she was trapped in. Her hands shook from the cold, her breath visible in the brisk evening air. She pulled her thin coat tighter around her body, wishing she could disappear into the shadows, away from the harsh stares of passers-by. Every day felt like a battle, against time, against people who never saw her, against a world that seemed determined to keep her down. She had no family left, just her Aunt Rose, who was growing frailer with each passing year. Maya's heart ached for a better future, one that felt just out of reach. Today, the weight of her world pressed on her chest more than ever. She had no idea that the next moment would change everything, but in her soul, she knew that she had to fight. There was no other choice. The world may be indifferent to her suffering, but Maya wasn't ready to give in. Not yet. Maya stepped into her small, dimly lit apartment, the door creaking as it closed behind her. Her tired eyes scanned the room, taking in the familiar sight of peeling paint, the worn-out furniture, and the faint smell of mildew that never seemed to leave. Aunt Rose was sitting by the window, wrapped in an old blanket. Her frail hands were busy knitting, but her tired eyes were focused on nothing in particular. Maya tried to mask her exhaustion, offering a weak smile as she dropped the grocery bag on the table. "I got some rice," she said softly, her voice barely audible. Rose nodded, but there was a distant look in her eyes, as though she hadn't really heard her. It had been like this for a while now. The once vibrant woman who used to comfort Maya with stories and laughter had faded, her health deteriorating with each passing day. The weight of caring for Rose, on top of her own struggles, made Maya feel like she was suffocating. Yet, she couldn't bring herself to leave. Rose was the only family she had left. She sighed, sitting down next to her aunt. "I'll get us through this," she whispered, as much to herself as to Rose. But the uncertainty gnawed at her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was slipping through her fingers. The silence was overwhelming. Maya stared at the small table in front of her, the rice sitting untouched in its bag. Her mind was racing with thoughts of everything she had to do: work, school, looking after Rose, and somehow trying to find a way out of this never-ending cycle. She hadn't even started on her homework yet, and tomorrow was another long shift at the diner. How much longer could she keep this up? Every day felt like a test of endurance, and she was beginning to wonder if she was failing. As she looked at her aunt, she felt a pang of guilt. Rose had always been the strong one, but now it was Maya who was holding everything together, and it felt like she was barely managing. Just as the weight of her thoughts began to overwhelm her, the phone rang, snapping her out of her spiral. She glanced at the caller ID. It was the diner. "Maya, you're scheduled for a double shift tonight," the voice on the other end said. Her heart sank. "I'll be there," she replied, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. She hung up and looked at Rose, who was now staring out the window, lost in her thoughts. Maya didn't want to go, but she had no choice. She couldn't afford to miss any shifts. "I'll be back soon," she whispered, even though she wasn't sure if Rose could hear her. Maya stood at the door of the diner, taking a deep breath before pushing it open. The clatter of dishes, the hum of voices, and the smell of fried food hit her immediately. It was a familiar scene, one that had become her second home. But today, it felt different. Every step inside felt heavier than the last. She walked to the back to change into her uniform, tying her apron around her waist, as the shift manager gave her a nod. "Double shift tonight, huh?" he said. Maya forced a smile. "Yeah, busy night ahead." "Oh." She didn't feel like talking. As she stepped into the dining area, the familiar faces of regulars greeted her, their smiles polite but distant. She moved quickly, refilling drinks and delivering food with mechanical precision. The hours dragged on, and the noise of the diner seemed to grow louder with each passing minute. When the clock finally struck midnight, Maya was beyond exhausted. But she still had one more task to complete: collect her tip. She knew the money wasn't enough to make a real difference, but it was all she had. As she picked up the empty glasses from the last table, she realized something. She had stopped dreaming a long time ago. All that was left was survival. By the time Maya got home, it was well past 2 a.m. Her feet ached from standing all night, and her body felt like it was being held together by sheer willpower. She entered the apartment quietly, careful not to disturb Rose. The older woman was still sitting by the window, her knitting forgotten in her lap. Maya put down her bag exhausted, but the sight of Rose made her pause. For a moment she considered waking her aunt, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. Rose deserved peace, even if it was just for a few more hours. Maya quietly made her way to the small kitchen, the only part of the apartment that still felt somewhat alive, despite the chipped tiles and cracked sink. She heated up some leftover soup and sat at the table, the silence pressing in on her. The world outside felt like it had no room for people like her. But she wasn't going to let it swallow her whole. Not yet. She had too much to fight for, even if she had no idea how she would win. As she ate, she couldn't help but wonder how much longer she could keep going. But then she heard Rose stir in the next room. Her aunt's voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "Maya, you're still here?" Maya smiled softly, rising from her chair to sit beside her. "I'm always here," she whispered back, her voice thick with emotion. The next morning, Maya woke up with a headache. The weight of her double shift lingered in her bones, but she couldn't afford to rest. Thought of Rose sitting alone in the corner, her health fading, kept her going. Maya moved through her morning routine mechanically, putting on her uniform and checking the clock. She was late for work again. As she hurried out the door, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the mirror. Her face, though tired and worn, reflected something more, a quiet determination. When she stepped into the diner, the usual hum of conversation filled the air, but it felt distant. Her boss, Mr. Carson, barely acknowledged her as he handed her a stack of plates. "Table 5's waiting," he said curtly. Maya nodded and walked to her station, doing her job without complaint. It was the only thing she knew how to do, even when everything around her seemed to be falling apart. That was until she spotted Alex across the room, sitting with a group of his friends, laughing. Her stomach turned. She hadn't seen him in weeks, but his presence here, in this moment, felt like a bad omen. Maya tried to ignore Alex, focusing instead on her tasks, but she couldn't shake the unease in her chest. He had been her closest friend once, back when life seemed simpler. But that was before things got complicated, before he started drifting away, showing up less and less, and eventually betraying her trust. She had always known something was off, but she hadn't expected him to hurt her the way he did. Maya could still feel the sting of his words, the lies he'd told her. "You'll never get out of here, Maya," he had said one night, his voice cold and dismissive. "This is your life now." His words echoed in her mind as she served table after table. She moved mechanically, the sting of betrayal lingering in her thoughts, making it harder to focus on the orders in front of her. When Alex caught her eye, she quickly looked away, pretending not to notice. It wasn't until later, when she was cleaning up at the end of the shift, that she realized he had left without paying. Her heart sank. Not only had he abandoned her emotionally, but now he was stealing from her too. Maya sat on the back steps of the diner after her shift, her body sore from hours of standing and serving. The cool night air was a welcome relief from the stifling atmosphere inside. She pulled her jacket tighter around her, staring down at the cracked concrete. The weight of the world seemed to press down on her, and she let out a slow, shaky breath. She was so tired, tired of working herself to the bone, tired of pretending everything was okay, tired of the constant cycle of disappointment. Her thoughts turned to Rose. She hadn't been able to visit her aunt that day, and now the guilt gnawed at her. Was she doing enough? Was Rose going to be okay? Just as she was about to get up, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Alex. "We need to talk." Her heart clenched. Despite everything, she still wanted to hear him out, but a deep, unsettling feeling lingered. She should have known better than to trust him again. The next morning, Maya met Alex at the old park bench near their childhood hangout spot. She was determined to get answers, but as soon as she saw him, all her anger seemed to dissipate, replaced by an overwhelming sense of hurt. Alex had always been charming, his smile infectious, but now, standing in front of her, he seemed smaller, almost apologetic. Maya, I'm sorry, he started, but Maya cut him off before he could finish. Sorry for what? She asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Sorry for what you did to me. For leaving me when I needed you most. For pretending that I didn't matter. Alex shifted uneasily, looking down at the ground. I was just trying to protect you, he mumbled, his voice low. Maya's chest tightened as the words hit her like a punch. Protect me? You've only ever hurt me, Alex. She turned away before he could say anything else. I don't need your protection, I need you to leave me alone. As she walked away, Maya felt a sense of finality wash over her. She had closed the door on him, and there was no going back. Maya walked back to the apartment that evening with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in weeks. The emotional weight of the confrontation with Alex still lingered, but now there was something else, a new resolve, a commitment to herself. She wasn't going to let him, or anyone, control her future. As she entered the apartment, she was met with silence. Rose was still sitting in her chair, knitting. The sight of her aunt, frail but still fighting, reminded Maya why she had to keep going. She couldn't afford to be weak. Not now. She dropped her bag on the table and went to the kitchen to prepare a simple meal for them both. As she worked, she thought about her future, about the scholarship she had barely considered before. She was going to take the next step, no matter how hard it seemed. She wasn't going to let her past define her. Not anymore. The days following her confrontation with Alex felt like a fog lifting. Maya began to focus more on herself. She studied late into the night, pushing aside the weight of her past. Each page of her textbook was a step forward, away from everything she had known. Her mind, once clouded with doubt and pain, slowly started to clear. But it wasn't just her studies she was focused on. She had started applying for scholarships, each one a new chance to escape the life she had been trapped in for so long. There were moments when the exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, but every time she looked at Rose, sitting by the window, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Rose had always believed in her, even when Maya didn't believe in herself. You'll make it, Rose would say softly, her voice full of quiet strength. But Maya knew she had to do this on her own. She had to believe in herself. And for the first time in a long time she did. Maya's application for the scholarship was the first step in a new direction, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. She had always felt that way, like she didn't belong, that the doors of opportunity were always closed to her. But she pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the steps ahead. She didn't have time to doubt herself. The hours she spent working in the diner, then studying late into the night, were starting to pay off. But just when things were beginning to feel like they might finally work out, she received a call. It was from the scholarship committee. Her heart raced as she answered, her hands trembling. We regret to inform you. The words hit her like a punch in the gut. She had been rejected. For a moment, the world seemed to fall silent around her. She stared at the phone in disbelief. All that work, all those hours, had been for nothing. She wanted to cry, to scream, but instead, she hung up and sat in the silence, trying to push back the tears. But even as the pain welled up, something inside her refused to give up. This wasn't the end. She would find another way. Maya sat by the window that evening, her mind racing with conflicting thoughts. The rejection stung, but it didn't feel like the end. She knew she couldn't let one setback define her. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink, Maya realized she had a choice. She could wallow in defeat, or she could pick herself up and keep moving forward. She thought of Rose, how her aunt had always fought, even when things seemed impossible. You have to keep going, Rose had told her many times. Maya knew her aunt was right. It was time to face the next challenge head on. She would apply to more scholarships, find new ways to push forward, and keep working. She couldn't afford to let failure be an option anymore. Not when so many people depended on her, and not when she had come so far. Tomorrow would be a new day, and she would give it everything she had. The next morning, Maya walked to the diner with a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about fighting for a future that she had started to believe in again. As she walked through the front doors of the diner, she straightened her back, ready to face the challenges ahead. Her boss, Mr. Carson, handed her a tray of food without a word. She took it, her eyes focused, her movements steady. The world outside was full of noise, but inside she had found a sense of calm. As the hours passed, Maya's movements became more fluid, more confident. She wasn't just going through the motions anymore. She was working towards something greater. At one point, one of the regular customers smiled at her and said, "You've got something special, Maya." His words caught her off guard, but instead of brushing them off like she normally would, she smiled back. Maybe she did have something special. Maybe she could make it out of here after all. The week passed quickly, and with each passing day, Maya felt a little more like herself. She spent her evenings studying harder than ever, now fully committed to her future. She had started applying for more scholarships, researching every opportunity she could find. One evening, as she sat at the kitchen table, going through a list of scholarship options, she received another call. This time her hands didn't tremble. When she answered, the voice on the other end was warm. "Maya, I'm happy to inform you that you've been selected for the scholarship." For a moment, the world stood still. She had done it. She had finally made it. Her heart swelled with pride, but as she looked over at Rose, she realized this was just the beginning. The journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. Maya felt a strange sense of calm as she stood outside the university building. The application had been accepted. The scholarship was hers. But it wasn't just the scholarship that filled her with a sense of victory. It was the realization that she had done it. She had pushed past every obstacle, every doubt, and had made it to this point. Her past, once a heavy burden, now felt like a distant memory, something she could look back on, but no longer be defined by. The future lay before her, uncertain but full of possibility. She had never imagined this moment, standing at the threshold of something bigger than her dreams. She thought about Rose, about the sacrifices her aunt had made for her. This victory wasn't just hers. It was theirs. But as Maya turned to walk back to the apartment, the weight of the next challenge settled on her shoulders. She wasn't done yet. The journey was only beginning, and she knew there would be more obstacles to face. But for now, she let herself breathe. She had earned this moment. The next few weeks were a blur of activity, packing, organizing, saying goodbyes. Maya had always dreamed of leaving the apartment, of escaping the small world she had been confined to. But now, as she packed her belongings, she found herself feeling a twinge of guilt. Rose wasn't getting any younger. Maya had promised to take care of her, and yet now she was leaving to pursue her own future. The guilt clawed at her, but she pushed it aside. Rose had always encouraged her to go after her dreams. "You're going to change the world, Maya," she had said. "I know you will." Maya smiled at the memory, but it didn't stop the ache in her chest. She would visit Rose whenever she could, but she knew that this was the right decision. It wasn't just about escaping the past anymore. It was about building a future for herself and for Rose. As she packed the last of her things, she looked around the apartment one last time. It had been her home, her prison, and now it was the place where she began her transformation. Maya's first day at the university was overwhelming. She walked across the sprawling campus, feeling like a small fish in a vast, unfamiliar ocean. The buildings seemed to tower over her, and she felt the weight of every step. She had come so far, but she wasn't sure if she truly belonged here. The students around her walked with a sense of purpose, but Maya felt like she was fumbling through each moment. It wasn't until she met a fellow student, Lucy, who struck up a conversation while waiting for class to start, that Maya felt a spark of hope. Lucy was outgoing and full of energy, the kind of person Maya never thought she would connect with. But, somehow, In the midst of her self-doubt, Lucy's genuine kindness lifted Maya's spirits. "You've got this, Maya," Lucy said with a smile. "You're not alone." And in that moment, Maya realized something important. She wasn't here to blend in. She was here to stand out. As weeks passed, Maya began to settle into university life, but the feeling of imposter syndrome still lingered. She had moments of doubt, wondering if she was good enough to be there, wondering if she belonged among these wealthy, well-prepared students. But she kept going, determined to prove to herself that she could succeed. It wasn't easy. Late nights, endless assignments, and constant pressure weighed heavily on her. Yet every time she felt like giving up, she thought of Rose. Her aunt had always been her rock, the one person who believed in her even when Maya couldn't believe in herself. Maya pushed through the struggles, knowing that every small step forward was a victory. One evening, as she sat at the library, finishing a paper that had seemed impossible just days before, Maya realized that she was no longer just surviving. She was thriving. It was late at night when Maya finally received a message from Rose. "I'm proud of you, Maya. I always knew you had it in you." The simple words brought tears to her eyes. Maya hadn't realized how much she had needed to hear that. She sat in her dorm room, staring at the message, her heart swelling with gratitude. Rose's belief in her had carried her this far, but now, Maya was beginning to believe in herself. She had fought through every challenge, every doubt, and had come out stronger on the other side. There would still be struggles ahead, and there would still be moments of fear and uncertainty, but for the first time in her life, Maya felt truly unstoppable. She wasn't just fighting for a better future anymore. She was creating it, one step at a time. Maya stood at the corner of the street, staring across the road at the familiar building, her old apartment. A wave of nostalgia and pain washed over her. It had been months since she left for university, months since she had stepped away from everything that once defined her. But something about the place felt different now. She wasn't the same person who had lived there, struggling with every day, surviving rather than living. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Alex. "We need to talk." Maya's heart skipped a beat. The last time they spoke, she had told him she never wanted to see him again, and yet here he was, reaching out. She had moved on, or so she thought. She had made peace with the fact that he would never be the person she needed him to be. But now, standing here, something stirred inside her. She didn't know if she should meet him, if it was even worth the effort. But curiosity got the better of her, and she replied, agreeing to meet him. It wasn't for him, though. It was for her, to finally close the door on a chapter of her life that still haunted her. When Maya arrived at the cafe, she saw Alex sitting by the window, his head down, his hands fidgeting nervously. He looked older, worn by the same life they had both tried to escape. When he saw her, his face lit up with a mix of relief and regret. "Maya," he started, his voice shaky. I've made a mess of things, haven't I?" Maya sat down across from him, her posture stiff, her eyes guarded. She had no desire to listen to his excuses, but she needed answers. She needed to hear it from him, to make sure that she wasn't imagining the betrayal, that it wasn't just in her head. "You did more than make a mess, Alex," she said quietly. "You took something from me, my trust, my time, and my belief that people could change." Alex's eyes welled up, and for a moment, he seemed genuinely remorseful. "I'm sorry, Maya," he whispered. "I was selfish, and I never understood what I had until it was gone." Maya took a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of closure. "It's too late for apologies, Alex," she replied. "I'm not the same person who would have forgiven you." She stood up ready to walk away, but Alex's voice stopped her. "Maya, please, don't leave things like this." But Maya didn't turn back. She had said what she needed to say, and it was time to move on. Maya walked away from the cafe feeling like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She didn't know if Alex would change, and she didn't care. What mattered now was that she had finally closed that door. She had spent so many years waiting for closure, but the truth was, it had always been in her hands. She had just needed to take it. As she walked down the street, she felt a strange sense of empowerment. For so long, she had been defined by her past, by the people who had wronged her. But now, she was defining herself. She had a future to build, a dream to chase. She wasn't going to waste any more time on people who couldn't see her worth. Maya's phone buzzed again, and she glanced at the screen. It was a message from Lucy, her new friend from university. "How's it going?" it read. Maya smiled and replied, "Better than ever." She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. Maya returned to her dorm that evening, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She had done the hard work of letting go, and now, for the first time in a long time, she felt free. The future that had once seemed uncertain now felt full of possibility. But as she walked into her room, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from the scholarship committee, informing her that there was a new opportunity for advanced research funding. Maya's heart raced as she read through the details. This was the chance she had been waiting for, a real opportunity to make a difference in her field. But it wasn't just about the funding. It was about proving to herself that she could succeed on her own terms, without relying on anyone else's validation. She sat down at her desk, the weight of the moment not lost on her. This was her time. No more waiting, no more doubts. She was ready to take the next step. The days that followed were a blur of hard work, excitement, and progress. Maya threw herself into her research, determined to make the most of the opportunity. But even in the midst of all the work, there were moments when she paused and looked back at how far she had come. She thought about her past, about the obstacles she had overcome, and about Rose, who had always believed in her. But now, Maya was beginning to see what her aunt had always known, that she was capable of greatness. As she finished her final research proposal, she sat back in her chair and smiled. It wasn't just the scholarship or the recognition that mattered. It was the person she had become, the strength she had found within herself. She wasn't just chasing a dream anymore. She was living it. Maya's hands trembled as she looked at her exam paper. This was the moment she had been working toward, the culmination of every sleepless night, every sacrifice. The pressure felt overwhelming, but this time, she was ready. She had faced countless obstacles, and had overcome them all. From the moment she left home to the late nights in the library, she had proven to herself that she was capable of achieving her dreams. But now, in the quiet of the classroom, everything seemed to hang in the balance. Her mind raced through everything she had learned, every strategy, and every step she had taken. The room was silent, save for the sound of pens scratching on paper. She glanced around, noting the faces of her classmates, some anxious, others confident. For a brief moment, Maya's mind wandered back to her Aunt Rose, who had always told her, "You have a purpose, Maya. You just have to keep going." That was all she needed to hear. With a deep breath, Maya began to write. She wasn't just doing this for herself anymore. She was doing it for everyone who had ever believed in her. When Maya handed in her paper, the weight that had been pressing on her shoulders seemed to lift, but it was quickly replaced with a sense of uncertainty. She had done her best, but what if it wasn't enough? The self-doubt crept back in, a constant companion throughout her journey. She stepped outside the classroom, her feet heavy as she walked down the hallway. She couldn't afford to fail, not now. Not when everything she had worked for was on the line. As she reached the door, she paused for a moment, looking out at the campus. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the buildings, and for the first time in weeks, Maya felt a strange calm. She had done everything she could, and now it was out of her hands. As she walked to the bus stop, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Lucy. "You've got this, Maya. I believe in you." Maya smiled and typed back, "Thanks. I'll let you know how it goes." It was a small comfort, but it reminded her that she wasn't alone in this fight. The next few days were a blur. Maya continued her routine, studying, attending classes, and working at the diner to make ends meet. But in the back of her mind, the looming result of her exam gnawed at her. She couldn't help but replay every moment, wondering if she had made a mistake or missed an important detail. Her classmates had seemed so confident, but Maya had always been the one who second-guessed herself. Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Rose. "I'm so proud of you, Maya. No matter what happens, you've already succeeded." The words brought tears to her eyes, but they also gave her the strength to face whatever came next. She wasn't just trying to pass this exam. She was proving to herself that she was capable of achieving her dreams, no matter how hard the journey had been. It wasn't just about success anymore. It was about growth, resilience, and knowing that she was on the right path. No matter the outcome, she had already won. The day the exam results were posted, Maya woke up early, unable to sleep the night before. Her heart raced as she opened her laptop, fingers trembling as she clicked on the link to check her results. The page loaded slowly, the seconds feeling like hours. When it finally appeared, her eyes scanned the page, looking for her name. And there it was. Pass with distinction. Maya's heart stopped for a moment before a wave of relief and joy washed over her. She had done it. Not just passed, but excelled. She wanted to shout, to tell someone, but she was alone in her dorm room, the silence almost deafening. She quickly texted Lucy. "I did it, I passed." The reply came instantly. "I knew you would. You're amazing." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with pride. This was more than just an academic achievement. This was the moment when everything she had worked for, every ounce of effort, had paid off. She wasn't just living in the present anymore. She was shaping her future. The realization that she had passed was still sinking in when Maya received another message. This one was from her university advisor. "We're pleased to inform you that you've been selected for a summer internship program. Congratulations." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had worked so hard for this, and now it was all starting to come together. The opportunities were endless. But more than anything, she realized that the victory wasn't just about the achievements. It was about the journey, the sleepless nights, the doubts, the betrayals, and the resilience that had gotten her here. She had proven to herself that she was capable of achieving everything she had set out to do, and she wasn't stopping anytime soon. As she looked out the window, she thought of Rose, who had always been her biggest supporter. This victory was for her. It was for everyone who had believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. The next morning, Maya packed her bags with a sense of purpose. She wasn't leaving her past behind, she was carrying it with her. As she closed the door to the apartment, Rose stood in the doorway, smiling proudly. "Remember," Rose said, "wherever you go, you carry this place with you." Maya nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I won't forget, Rose. This is just the beginning." Stepping out into the bright morning, Maya felt the world open up. She was ready to embrace her future, knowing nothing was impossible. Maya sat at the kitchen table, speaking with Rose, recounting her time at university. "It's been hard," Maya admitted. "But it's also been the best time of my life. I'm not just learning from books. I'm learning about myself." Rose listened intently, her face full of pride. "You've always been strong, Maya. I'm so proud of you." Maya smiled, realizing that for so long she had searched for validation from others, but now she understood that her strength came from within. The journey had shaped her into who she was. As the evening passed, Maya realized how far she had come. The apartment, once her prison, now felt like a place where she had grown. She turned to Rose, her heart full of gratitude. "I'm not just visiting," she said softly. "I want us to build something together." Rose's eyes filled with tears as she took Maya's hands. "You've already built it, Maya. You've always been the one holding it together." Maya nodded, feeling a deep connection to both her past and future. This was only the beginning of their new chapter. That night, Maya sat on the edge of her bed, the cool air drifting through the window. She thought about the challenges ahead, the fear of failure still present. But this time, she wasn't running from it. She had learned to face and overcome her fears. She wasn't the same person who had left months ago. She had grown stronger, more resilient. As she looked out at the moonlit sky, Maya smiled softly. She wasn't just chasing a dream anymore. she was living it. "I'm ready for what comes next," she whispered, and for the first time, she believed it. Maya packed her bags again, but this time, her heart was light. She wasn't leaving her past behind, she was bringing it with her. As she closed the apartment door, Rose stood in the doorway, smiling. "No matter where you go, you carry this place with you," Rose said. Maya smiled. "I won't forget, Rose. This is just the beginning." Stepping into the morning, the city felt different. The streets were the same, but her path had changed. Maya was ready to embrace the world, knowing that nothing was impossible.